Assalamu alaikum and very good morning, my dear students. I welcome you all in another Google Classroom. I hope that you all are fine and doing well. Students, in our previous lesson, the colonization of the subcontinent, we have already discussed that the Europeans came in the subcontinent as traders, but later they started to capture the most of the land in the subcontinent. By 1857, the British East India Company ruled most of the subcontinent. My dear students, today we are going to start a new topic, unit number 8, the War of Independence, and we'll read textbook pages 80, 81, 82 and 83. In this topic, we'll read and discuss about how the rule of the British East India Company affected the lives of people in the subcontinent. Let's have a look on prior knowledge. To check your prior knowledge, I'm going to ask some questions from you guys. Why did the British East India Company come to the subcontinent in the 17th century? I hope that you must know the answer of this question. Yes, as we have already discussed, that they came in the subcontinent to trade. Next question is, how did it end up ruling parts of the subcontinent? They used their armies to capture the land. Let's discuss the learning objectives of today's topic. Students, at the end of the lesson, you will be able to interpret how the British used new technologies to communicate over great distances. You should be able to identify and describe some causes of dissatisfaction and their effects. You should be able to identify some of the lasting changes made by the British in the subcontinent. You should also be able to describe the situation in the subcontinent just before the War of Independence. Describe the attack on British garrison that started the war. Following are the main points of today's topic. By 1857, the British East India Company ruled most of the subcontinent. The British built railways, new roads, canals, ports, and the telegraph to send messages across long distance. The British changed the law of inheritance, sent Christian priests to start schools and churches in subcontinent. The army of British East India Company had more Indian soldiers than British soldiers. Indian soldiers at Meerut broke into the prison and set free the 85 disobedient soldiers and 800 other prisoners. A fight started at the fort. Many Indian and European civilians were killed. Indian soldiers took Delhi. Bahadur Shah Zafar lived in a palace in Delhi. He did not have an empire. The Indian soldiers named him the Emperor of all India. Students, imagine sending messages across the subcontinent with no phones. At that time, the British built the telegraph there. It was a new way of sending messages across long distance. They could get news quickly from all over the subcontinent. And the telegraph sent the messages along wires. Poles carried the wires for thousands of miles. They also built railways so that they could travel across the subcontinent easily. This helped them to rule. The railways also made trade easier for them. And we still have the railways and many stations the British built. They also made some other changes in the subcontinent. They made some new laws there. They also made a law that due to that law people became against to them. They made a law that if a man died without a son, the government took his land. They made this law in the subcontinent too, so they took more and more lands there. They also sent British Christian priests to start schools and churches there. Some people thought they would try to make them Christians. They wanted to keep their own religions. So due to these things, people became against to the British people. Due to these things, people of the subcontinent they became against the British people. So there is a big trouble arose in the British army. So what do you think what might happen? Let's see. The British East India Company's army had more Indian than British soldiers. The army could not work without them. For a long time, the army allowed for their religious customs and paid them well. Then the army changed the Indian soldiers' work and pay. The soldiers were unhappy about this and about what might happen next. The army got new guns. The gunpowder cartridge were made from paper covered with grease to make them waterproof. The grease was made from animal fat. Muslim soldiers refused to touch it in case it was from pigs, and Hindus refused to touch it in case it was from cows. What do you think that our British army made such a mistake? The army leaders who brought in the new guns might not have been aware of the different religious beliefs of the soldiers. That for Muslims, it is forbidden for Muslims to touch the pig and even the pig's fat, and Hindus worship the cows and they can't even think to kill the cows. As a result, the soldiers refused to use new guns and obey the new orders. So, what happened then? They were punished because in any army, soldiers have to obey orders from their chiefs. So, at the British Army base at Meerut near Delhi, the British officers made 85 disobedient soldiers stand in front of all the others. Then they stripped their uniforms and shoes from them and put them in the army prison. They punished them in this way, and they called those soldiers who didn't obey their orders, they called them disobedient soldiers. They were 85 in numbers. At that time, some Indian soldiers they were thinking that they should be punished because they disobeyed their officers. But on the other hand, some were thinking that the officers' orders were unreasonable. So, and the British Army base at Meerut, some Indian soldiers broke into the prison and set free the 85 disobedient soldiers and 800 other prisoners who were already in the prison. There was fighting at the front and in the town. Many Indian and European civilians were killed, and European officers' homes were set on fire. Students, at that time, the commanders of the British Army were not ready for an attack. Actually, they were not expecting from the soldiers, from the Indian soldiers, that they could do so. They did not believe that it would happen. So there were not enough British soldiers at Delhi to defend the fort. The officers there blew up the store of guns and ammunition to stop the Indian soldiers getting them. The explosion killed 3 of the officers. The Indian soldiers got some of the guns and ammunition out. Many Indian soldiers stationed at Delhi joined the attack on the fort. Others did not, but they did not try to stop it. Actually, they were with their soldiers. The Indian soldiers took Delhi. The last Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar lived in the palace there. He no longer had an empire, and the British paid him a pension. The Indian soldiers named him Emperor of all India. He did not want this, but it was hard for him to say no. All the Indian soldiers did not join in the attack on the fort at Delhi, but they supported them as they did not try to stop them. They let them do their work Okay, dear students, it's time to ask some plenary questions. Question number one is, what made the Indian soldiers unhappy? And the next question is, why was the grease a problem? So this is about the plenary, and I hope you would be able to answer of these questions orally. Okay, my dear students, for more information about the topic, you can follow this YouTube link. With this is the end of today's lesson. Take very good care of yourself and people around you. Have a very good day, and Allah Hafiz.